Joining me now is the author of groundbreaking works, international bestsellers, including The Strange Death of Europe, The Madness of Crowds, The War on the West, and his latest on democracies and death cults. Douglas Murray, let's start in the UK, where Keir Starmer is talking tough. He is going to smash the gangs. He's going to stop the illegal immigration crisis. We've heard this talk from the PM before. How serious is this policy and how likely is it to succeed?
Well, it's very unlikely to succeed at the moment. He seems to be trumpeting a deal he's done with French President Emmanuel Macron for a so-called one-in, one-out policy. It's not clear to me or to the British public, I think, why, if hundreds of people are managing to pour in every day to the UK, you should trumpet a sort of occasionally you'll get one person back out policy. But the main thing is the obsession that the government has with smashing the gangs. It's very typical politicking, this. It suggests that the problem of illegal migration is simply that of the people smuggling gangs. And that's very useful for a left-wing government like Labour, because it presents it as if there's no harm done by the illegal migrant. It is merely the criminal gangs who bring them into the country who are the problem, as if these are like press gangs of the Royal Navy in the 18th century, sort of rushing around the streets, gathering migrants from the north of France and forcing them onto boats to begin a new life in the UK. That isn't the case. The people smuggling gangs are part of the problem, but they're not themselves the problem. They're just one part of it. The problem is that the government wants to put no onus on the people who knowingly are illegally entering the UK. And that's because they want to always cling to this idea that the illegal migrant is always an asylum seeker, somebody with a legitimate claim to be breaking into the country. And that simply isn't the case. It's just politicking on their part, and a desire to never blame the people who are actually the ones coming into the country breaking the law.
Well, yes, and we're seeing more and more sugar put on the table. I don't know how you hope to stop illegal immigration when you're providing ever greater incentives, Douglas, including giving landlords in the UK and parts of England more favourable terms, including 5-year full rent agreements, if they provide housing to asylum seekers. So again, that just shows you where the policies and the rhetoric are not matching up. And we're seeing some protests and counter-protests, clashes happening, including outside a 4-star hotel in East London where illegal immigrants will be housed. Here is a Greens councillor and a protester having a debate that got rather heated.
There are no safe and legal routes for refugees to come to this country. This is the only way they can come here. It's on a boat. We have a lot of stakes in the conflicts and the climate crisis that causes people to be refugees and have to come to another country. They're not choosing to leave their country at their home, their children, their parents.
About children, you about children.
Excuse me.
Douglas, the anger is palpable there. People are fed up. They've had years of this from the Tories, the supposed Conservatives that govern like Labor, and now we've got a Labor government who seem to be governing like the Greens.
Yes, they simply forget always who the people are that they're meant to represent. A member of Parliament in Britain is not meant to represent the people of the world. They're meant to represent the people of their constituency and, by extension, the people of the United Kingdom. They're not meant to be the defence team for everybody entering the country illegally. It's just the most preposterous abandonment of their roles and of their duties. It's really quite straightforward in its root. The UK is not a huge country. It cannot take in all of the poor and dispossessed of the world. It couldn't even take in all of the people in the world who really do have legitimate asylum claims. It couldn't do it. It couldn't take in all of the people who would like to come with legitimate claims. There's just no way. The country would be overrun. But another left-wing MP in the UK said last week that the UK should continue this policy of allowing illegals into the country until it is overwhelmed, until the point at which the country is overwhelmed, and only then would the country need to stop. That is, as I say, that is an absolute abandonment of their duty. It is MPs who are literally willing to crash the country with a policy of allowing in endless numbers of people. And as I say, the numbers are literally endless. The country could not take in all of the people who would like to come with legitimate claims. And it certainly can't take in all of the people in the world who would like to come who also don't have legitimate claims, who are the vast majority of the people currently arriving.
Now, Labor are hoping to hold on to power by lowering the voting age. It's estimated they could secure 500,000 more votes at the next election if 16 and 17-year-olds are allowed to vote. What do you make of this plan, Douglas? Some argue the voting age should be lifted, but should a 16-year-old, 17-year-old who can't even buy cigarettes, they can't buy alcohol, they can't get married, should they be able to vote?
No, absolutely not. It's pure, as you say, once again, it's pure politicking. The Labour Party is doing this for two reasons. One is that they think the optics of it will make them more attractive to younger voters. And secondly, they assume that younger voters are going to be in their favour. That's not necessarily the case. There's some very interesting data showing, for instance, that younger voters disproportionately by population are likely to vote for Reform UK, Nigel Farage's party. That would be quite a funny thing in the tail, wouldn't it, if that were to happen? But as you mentioned, Rita, it's obviously the case that if you can't, you're not deemed to be of an age to buy cigarettes, to buy alcohol, to be able to marry. Why should you have the vote? By the way, it was very interesting in the past week. At least two Labour MPs I know, including people in the government, didn't seem to realise when interviewed on air that you're not allowed to marry in the UK at 16. So they don't even know the laws as they exist, even as they try to introduce new laws like this.
Now let's go to the US, and President Donald Trump looks like he's going to be pulling the US out of UNESCO. That's the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organisation. This decision comes after a 90-day review. And Douglas, the organisation was deemed to be anti-American, anti-Israel and pro-DEI, three things that the Trump administration does not like. And it's not unprecedented. President Reagan also withdrew the US from UNESCO. What do you think of this decision?
Yes, I mean, the Trump administration doesn't like anti-American international bodies. And that's something which is, you would have thought normally would be sort of quite straightforward, quite obvious, not controversial. But there are so many people, sadly, who seem to think that any organization with UN in the title must be angels, effectively. And that isn't the case. I mean, there's a fundamental misapprehension at the root of a lot of people's worldview, which is that because something is an arm of the United Nations, it must be doing the Lord's work. And yet the problem with the United Nations now and with its entities is what it's often been in the case, as it was in President Reagan's day, that the tilt of the organization tilts against America, against the Western democracies, because of the predominance of unfree, undemocratic, and tyrannical countries within the organization. And, I don't mind if people want to pretend that the United Nations is the world's parliament. If they want to imagine that, that's one thing. But to imagine as a result that it is what it says it is, and that its entities are what they claim to be, is just a grotesque category error. UNESCO, like so many organizations, UNRWA, the UN Human Rights Council, These are not bodies that represent or further the interests of the American taxpayer, the American voter, and often work directly against them. So why exactly should the American taxpayer be funding them?
It's a very good question. It's one I'd be posing to our government right here in Australia. Israel and Syria, we know they're resuming dialogue on security matters in the wake of deadly sectarian clashes. We're seeing, just Douglas, horrific acts of brutality, footage that I can't play, the Druze population being targeted, and this footage is simply too graphic, too sickening to play. What can be done to help this community, Douglas, and other religious minorities in Syria?
You know, it's absolutely appalling what's been going on in recent days in Syria. Noticeable as always, the people who've been completely silent on the matter, who obsess with anything that Israel does in the region and are totally unbothered when a jihadist or former jihadist, if you take him at his word, like the new leader of Syria, oversees a country in which this kind of ethnic strife is routine and commonplace. The Druze are a very small minority in the region, crossing in roughly in Lebanon, Israel, Syria, and are very beleaguered. And massacres like that in recent days, the only country that has done anything to actually intervene and try to stop this is the government of Israel, who is doing so partly at the behest of own Druze population. The Druze population in Israel include remarkable people, include remarkable heroes who serve in the army and so on. But Israel decided to actively step in and try to prevent some of this ethnic cleansing of the Druze of Syria. The rest of the world is just sort of sitting by, either not noticing or just talking about it. And it's very interesting that, isn't it? That once again, Israel in the region alone acts against a threat to a minority and gets no credit for it, no praise for it. In actual fact, as we saw in an interview this week with the former head of the MI6 intelligence services in the US, who was interviewed by, I think, Christian Amanpour on CNN, don't even understand the situation in the region and don't even believe that Israel is acting in the interests of the Druze minority, and also don't seem to understand who the Druze minority are. It is a really shocking lack of comprehension at very high levels. And of course, that means that there's also a shocking lack of action.
You're right about that. Let's actually just have a quick look at that interview you referred to. And this is supposed to be an expert opining about Israel's motivations in Syria.
I don't actually believe the Israeli line that they are intervening in southern Syria in order to support the Druze, as if they have concerns about the Druze. The Druze are Arabs, they're Muslims, they are a part of the network of ethnic groups and religious groups inside Syria. What Israel is looking for, I think, is a fragmented Syria, one which is weak and divided.
It's the former head of MI6, and he doesn't know basic information, Douglas, like the Druze are not Muslims.
Yeah, that was really shocking, I have to say, really shocking. There's a sort of presumption people have that figures like this, at least know what they're talking about. Yes, I mean, he didn't. The Druze, among other things, are not Muslims by any means. And it's just that lack of knowledge, I suppose, leads to the follow-on thing. He believes that the Israelis, who will include Druze in their own army, would not be acting legitimately in defense of the Druze minority. As for the idea that Israel wants a fractured Syria, I mean, this is just pure projection or something like that by the former head of MI6. They don't. Israel would like to live, I assume, beside a peaceful Syria that was well governed, that had peace accords with Israel, part of the Abraham Accords, and so a normalization. They don't want an endless war zone next door to them. Who would? We've seen what that means in recent years. We've seen what it means foreign proxies in Syria firing into Israel and so on. Of course. No, I mean, I've said to you often, Rita, there's this feeling in recent years that the adults have left the room. And that's still true. It's also the case many of the people who are meant to be adults who are still in the room turn out not to be fit for purpose.
Douglas Murray, thank you so much for your time tonight.
It's a great pleasure.